Just going to give it one more minute. Okay, so why don't we call the order at 6:32? First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Participants could unmute. And we will start. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of
of
the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
and justice for all.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. Item C on the agenda this evening, public comment. So we will open the floor now to public comment as shown on the screen. We will administer as we always do. If anybody would like to add public comment, if you could please raise your hand and you will be unmuted to speak.
Hi, Sam. Hi, it's Sam Reisner at 41 Main Street. I just wanted to encourage the committee to work with the town's attorneys to keep as much information as possible available on the website and other platforms that the building committee is running now within the 30 days leading up to the election. This is vital information for the community to learn about the project. And so I urge you to really see what you can do to make that possible. As well as for people to understand that there are other places that are mirroring this content so that if it becomes unavailable, it is still accessible to the public overall. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sam. Any other public comment at this time?
Not seeing any other hands.
Okay. All right, we will move on then to item D, which is approval of the minutes. So could I get a motion to approve the attached February 24th, 2021 minutes?
So moved.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes.
You guys are so efficient. All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Johnny. All right, all opposed? All right, unanimously approved. Next order of business is correspondence received 2/20/2021 to 3/5/2021. So we did receive two questions and comments from community members using the website form from Kurt and Ashley. Those are included in the agenda packet and are being shown here that Devin has for us. So responses have been sent as far as questions, and if there was a question and answer provided. And we also we encourage as much participation from the community as possible on questions. So please continue to use that form and engage with the committee. And you know, we are a great source of information here. The website is a great source of information, and you know, we do everything we can to try to get a response back out as quickly as possible, but make sure that that's a comprehensive answer that that meets the needs. So please continue to engage with us using that form or public comment in the meetings. Any way you have the ability to do so, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity. And we're going to actually talk a little bit more about some more opportunities a little bit later on in the meeting as well.
Meg, can I offer something?
Yeah.
Kat, thank you for sending along the link to some of that stuff. There is a fair amount of information on that particular link that was sent to all of us. I mean, and I wonder at some point in time how some of that might be curated so that if somebody lands on that page, they don't become overwhelmed with reports that really chronicle back, quite a ways. And I just wonder, are we best served to have all of that just on one landing page as you get there, all those different PDF documents, and how can it be kind of curated in a way that it's user friendly, so to speak? And I don't know if Ira's ever sort of taken a look at that and might offer some suggestions on that.
So the navigation that you're speaking about, Michael, that's just internally for the building committee members.
Gotcha.
It's our internal. Okay. So all of that information is available on the website in a more user-friendly manner.
Okay, great. Excellent. Because I was like, perfect. Thank you. You
There's
put
a
my
lot
heart
in
at
there.
ease. Thank you. And maybe just a follow-up to the question that was raised about the softball field. Not that we have to get into it now, but it did sound like, and I don't remember the specifics of this, but it sounds as though that there's some element of contingency about what happens with the 1928 building with respect to the opportunity to put a softball field on campus. Is that my understanding that right?
Yeah, let me hop in here, Michael. Just
we don't have to go through it now.
Yeah.
I'm not certain. It would be helpful at some point in time to figure out if that's something that we're putting in as a contingency ad so that we understand its opportunity.
Yeah, this is, kind of, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that removal of the 1928 building later. But, to your point, there's a couple things going on here, and we're always, the design that we have in front of us is replacing the field in kind that we have right here, right on the facility today. So we're not removing anything that we have today as a practice field. But the addition of a new field, which is something we've talked about, is really, in order to get the space required for that, we need a decision on the 1928 building, whether it's there or not.
Okay.
So, there's a couple components there. And Richard, did I get that right? Did I express that correctly?
Yes, you did. You're 100% correct.
Okay. So that's what we just want to make sure. Oh, I'm sorry, Richard. Go ahead.
Well, I was finished, but I think I heard Michael say something.
Yeah. So what I'm wondering if it would be helpful in what, whoever's responsibility it is to articulate the opportunity cost of keeping the building or removing it, if we have sort of a best use of that land, if it were removed, is that our obligation to communicate that? Is that the town's obligation? Do we actually script how that land could be used if the building weren't there?
No, that will not be our obligation. So there'll be plenty of opportunities. There's going to be a whole nother committee that's going to be established around what happens around the 1928 building and what's going to be done there.
But I guess I'm asking the question, if it's raised, if it's removed, would it be the building committee's responsibility to determine what the use of that land would be?
No.
So we can't say to someone, hey, listen, if the building's removed, then there's an opportunity to put a softball field.
We can let them know that was part of our conversations.
Okay.
We don't
have a plan. We don't have a site plan that shows that here's the softball field that goes in that location.
There might be a version that can be shared at a later date that we might be able to pass on as part of the conversations that are going to be had by that separate committee. But again, that will not be our obligation to do that at that point.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other thoughts or questions on correspondence? Yeah.
Wendy, just out of curiosity, and you kind of mentioned the 1928 building.
Yep.
Do you know when, are there plans or conversations as to when that committee is going to start to formulate? Or is that going to interfere, I guess, with?
No, that won't have, that decision can't be made until after the referendum.
Okay.
Because it's contingent upon what happens with the result of the referendum, in essence, because, based on the result, then additional steps would need to be taken. So at that point, the town would come back to the table, is my understanding from the update from town council, to say, based on the results, we need to just start thinking about what's going to happen with the 1928 building. So for example, if for some reason the referendum shouldn't pass, then we don't have to do anything, because the 1928 building remains as is in the current structure. But if it does pass, then the town would then need to take that next step in order to establish the building committee specific to the 1928 building to decide what needs to happen moving forward.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Any other thoughts or questions around that? All good questions. Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to item F, which is reports. First up is chair report. I think once again, our circumstances here that I'm going to defer the time for chair report into our new business items moving forward, which are super important, which is talking about the cost estimate amendment, which is directly related to the 1928 building, is item 1, and getting deep into the community outreach calendar that was included in the agenda. So I'm going to defer my time towards those new business items. So item 2 is town council liaison report, but do we know if Chris was able to join us? It doesn't look
I
like
know
it.
we ended the town council meeting minutes before.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. There was a lot of conflicts tonight with meetings, and a lot of people participating in both. So I think I'd prefer probably to defer, though, to see, on that report, just to make sure that we get an update from Chris and hear his thoughts on anything else he wants to share. So at this point, I think we'll defer in town council liaison report and move right into communications subcommittee report. I'll start here, and then we just had an hour meeting prior to this one, which was very robust. We had a lot of conversation around communications, and that's obviously going to be continued as we move into kind of the next phase of our efforts as the building committee. But really what our focus was is, again, talking about website improvements and anything we're working on there. The tools that Ira is helping us build for overall project communication, which talks about, really focusing people's attention on the value and the need for this school and what that means and what it looks like. So with specific presentations, as well as conversation around the next newsletter content and what's going to be included in there. That is all in the works. Again, we'll talk a little bit more about timing with that when we talk about the schedule, and a high level overview of the communications calendar that we're going to focus on as well in item 2 of new business. So it was really a lot of conversation around, what the difference is now in this project as far as the focus and what that means. And there's a lot of implications to that, and a lot of engagement, and a lot of things that need to be managed, and understanding everybody's role, including the building committee in that, and where we need people's help and support through that process. So it was a really good conversation to really talk about what next steps look like, and how we best address our communication efforts, our social media efforts, and how we layer that all into a comprehensive approach for communication moving towards that blackout date that Sam referred to as well. So it's important for us to understand that we have a very focused window of opportunity for communication. And then, we have partners, hopefully, that will help us with communication after that point. So I think it was a really good conversation to really start focusing on the details required for overall communication strategy. So I'll leave it at that. I want to give other members the opportunity to provide any other feedback or comments or anything that I missed in that update.
I think you covered it all.
Okay. All right, great. As I said, I think we're going to get into, a lot of it's going to come up anyways, as we start talking about the community outreach calendar and what that means and what it looks like. But that's kind of the general overview. We probably could have talked for another hour, to be honest with you, about topics and conversations, which is great. That's the level of engagement. That's the passion and commitment. And so it was a really good meeting. Next order is Board of Education Liaison report. So Beth.
Nothing to report. The board meets again on the 22nd. It's budget time right now. So.
All right, great. Kat, financial report.
So the only update to the financial report, and Devin will pull it up on the screen, is
Sorry about that.
there was a roughly a $20 increase. We've had some additional survey. We, as we mentioned before, we pay for the postage on incoming surveys back to us. So that was just $20 from February 25th to March 5th. So the total that we have on hand now is $135,318.15. So not many changes.
Oh, there it is. All right, any questions or thoughts for Kat? Okay, state legislative updates. I'll ask Mark or Chris if there's anything new.
Nothing new to report. They're still in session.
All right, and industry update. Richard, anything significant?
Nothing significant, quite frankly. We did release another project out to bid. There seems to be a lot of interest, but we won't get the bid results until mid-April sometime. So I'll give you another project bid results and see if the trend is continuing or if it's changing.
Great. Anybody have any questions? I didn't give an opportunity for Chris and Mark either, but Chris, Mark, Richard, any questions from the committee or thoughts or comments they want to share?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll move right on to new business. First item is to approve the amended cost estimate for the FHS building projects. So before that conversation, if I could get a motion on the table for that approval.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, all right, so we will open it up for discussion now. What I'm going to do, I think, is we have a presentation, I think, that I'm going to turn over for Mark and Richard to discuss, but just to level set, this was included in the agenda, but this this conversation is a result of the decisions that were made in the February 25th, 2021 special town council meeting, where there was unanimous approval about the 1928 building as it's associated to or no longer associated to the high school building project. So this is what the charge was back to our committee, to remove the demolition of the 1928 building from the FHS project scope. There's Wendy, where we were just talking about to create a 1928 building committee upon successful referendum for the FHS project. So that would be the next step of the process for taking on that scope of work independent of our project. And then talking about the communication, which is something that we will be focusing on in the upcoming newsletter, as far as how this decision that we see in front of us here from town council impacts our project, and make sure the community really understands what that means. So based on that level set, I'm going to actually pass this over to Mark and Richard to kind of walk through what this new view looks like, so that we understand the financial impact to the project as far as the estimate's concerned, and then we can have discussion and vote from there.
Okay, so we'll just walk you quickly through the budget review. This is very similar to what we had presented a few weeks ago. The numbers didn't change too drastically, but here's the big impact right here. So within the construction costs, we've taken out that $336,000 change And I'll go through the working document in just a minute, but essentially it was $241,000 worth of demo and $94,000 of abatement that makes up that $336,000 that we had been carrying along for the demolition costs, combined demolition costs of the 1928 building. So that really was the biggest impact there. The total change brings you down to we were at 109.5 for totals, and 100 I think 5.2 or 3 for net and town share. So the net and town share goes down a little bit. The total goes down a little bit, so now we're even more within our target net town share. Before we go on, is there any questions on this slide before I go into the more detailed slide? All right, Devin, can you scroll to the working document? Thank you. So you can see here, again, these were the numbers that we had presented last time, where we had a reduction in the A&E design fees of 100,000, the professional fees of 100,000. You can see here we plugged in the removal of the demo of the 1928 building. So that's this new number here that comes off of the new building construction costs. So the 900 wing costs aren't impacted by that demo. So we put it here within the new building costs. These are the items that we had, the building committee had approved last time around to remove from the project scope, which is proposed to add alternates. Again, these were items that did not interfere with the education specs or programming in any way. These were sort of nice to haves, and Richard had gone through them last time. If we want to go through them again, we can. The FF&E numbers were unchanged. The contingency was unchanged. Really, you see the difference here in the grand total and the net town share. So this is how we get to the new net town share of 105 as opposed to 105.2. So any questions there? Any further discussion or explanation?
I just want to give everybody an opportunity here to ask questions about that decision around the 1928 building, make sure everybody's crystal clear on what that meant, and the complete separation of that of the future of the 1928 building from this project. So we will not be addressing 1928 from this point forward. We do have a plan in place after referendum. If that's the case, the town has a plan in place, but that's not something we will include a statement in our upcoming newsletter regarding that, saying that it has been removed from our scope of work. But, at this point, that will not be part of our conversations moving forward. That makes sense to everybody. Anybody have any thoughts or comments?
I don't know how we compete with the carriers.
I know, exactly. bringing somebody so cute into the conversation. All right, so everybody understands implications and the cost removal, and I just want to make sure that if you had an opportunity to ask any questions or get clarification. It's pretty clear from town council what they wanted us to do, so.
Meg, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, so yes, I was at the town council meeting. It was very clear. And I was waiting for the summary that Mark has prepared and presented to the committee. We want to fold this information into an amended schematic design report, which we did prepare. And whenever you're ready to distribute it, Meg, you can distribute it. But the first chart that Mark just showed you is now included in the amended schematic design report. We have also included a site plan that shows very carefully how we've delineated the project limit line so that it goes around the 1928 building, clearly illustrating that we're excluding that area. And that was pretty clear direction from the town council. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear.
Great. And I think that's helpful for us, Richard, just to have that history as well, to understand these decisions as they were made and making sure we're reflecting it in the documentation. So that's going to be super helpful for us, I think, to be able to have that as a point of reference as well. All right. Last opportunity, questions or thoughts in addition before we vote? Okay. So the motion on the table is to approve the amended cost estimate for the FHS building project as shown. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimously approved. Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, next item of business is, I think, a good point of conversation for us as a committee. As I mentioned, we did have a high-level conversation at the subcommittee meeting prior to this one, but I think it's important for us as an entire building committee to have this conversation moving forward. So could I get a motion to approve the attached community outreach calendar?
I motion to approve the outreach calendars.
Or, excuse me, yeah, correct. I'm sorry. Yep. And then second.
I'll second it.
All right. So let's open it up for discussion. Kat, you want me to start and then you can hop in with details?
Perfect.
As required. Okay. So first of all, before we actually jump right in here to the calendar that's available, I kind of mentioned when I was talking briefly during the chair report that this is really a change in focus for the building committee. So, our last vote really was our final analysis of the work and the project. And we've been so heads down on making sure we get this solution and this proposed schematic design to be as accurate as possible and a representation that meets the statement of needs. And I think we've done a tremendous job along those lines in coming up with something I think that really makes sense for the district and really makes sense for the community. And we've done great work and defensible work and made strong decisions getting us to this point. So now our focus shifts, and our shift is around communication and education and sharing knowledge. And although we have been doing this all along and we've had communications meetings, really our focus now becomes around engagement, community engagement, and making sure we get as much information out there in people's hands as possible. So in that effort, we're going to talk tonight about kind of the overall strategic approach of the calendar, and then how we as building committee members support this effort and how important it is that our voices are heard around this project, and that we have representation and we act as advocates and sources of knowledge and understanding around this project, every single one of us. And that means in person, as you're talking to friends, that means at these engagement meetings, that means on social media, that means all these other avenues of communication, so that we can get people as informed as possible about the work that's been done, and also the value that this really is a great solution. And this is the value it's going to bring to the district and the community. And now's the time to do it. So that being said, I'm going to actually ask Kat to kind of walk through what this looks like. And then we'll kind of add detail as we go along.
Okay, so the two main focuses of our community outreach efforts are in what we're calling neighborhood meetings and then what we're calling topic meetings. Most of the work the meetings are going to be in April. So I'll just take it month by month to start. The first neighborhood meeting that we're going to hold is with the abutting neighbors in the Highlands. We did visit with them last April, and then we were put on pause almost immediately after. So they're the first group that we want to re-engage and discuss the project and some mitigation strategies that we have during the construction period. So that will be next week at 6:30. Everything would be on Zoom. Then we kind of dive into for neighborhood meetings based by elementary school district. So we've broken it into First at East Farms on the 29th, then Noah Wallace on the 31st. Devin, if you could go to April. Union School Elementary District, so to speak, on April 12th, and then West District on April 14th. We'll talk a little bit more. I'll have Meg kind of go through what we're anticipating in terms of participation from all of the building committee members in these neighborhood meetings, but I'll skip over to the topic meetings. The topic meetings are a concentrated communication effort regarding certain things about the project. So our communications subcommittee helped us come up with these topics. We decided to do them every Thursday, so we can call it Topic Thursday, and it's just an easier way to communicate, knowing every Thursday we would be doing them at noon. At noon gives people an opportunity to join us for lunch, and then we would also make sure that people know it would be posted, the recording of the meeting, in the evening, so they can watch it at their, whenever they have some time. So each week, Topic Thursday, first one would be on project timeline. That would be going over not only what got us to this point, because if you remember, we have had 2 years of work almost, really a high level thing of how we arrived at the decision we did, but then moving forward, what the project timeline looks like. When the shovel goes in the ground, and all of it is high level, but kind of an overview of what the timeline would look like. Next is side by side, and that is a representation of what is in the existing building and then what the solution is in the new building, really showing the value and the improvements of the new building. The next meeting would be an overview of the external elements of the building as well as the site plan. So traffic, what's going on Monteith Drive, how we're improving that traffic flow, parking, all of that would be covered there. The following week would be the inside of the building, classroom, the structure, the flow of the building, really focusing on that. And then the last one would be on April 29th, and that would be going over the cost and tax impact. So really concentrating all of these topics out really can focus the conversation, have questions around that, and we will have obviously presentations and our professional partners there. Thursday, April 1st, Kathy or Scott, if you want to jump in and talk about the PTO meeting that we have scheduled. This is going to be an effort to reach out to the PTO all at once. Scott, if you want to jump in about that one.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Kat. So we're looking forward to joining together. We've been working with the elementary principals, and so we'll be getting together with all representatives from each of the elementary school PTOs collectively that evening. I'm sure through the communication subcommittee in the month ahead, we can spend some time and decide who from the committee should attend that, but gives us a chance really to connect with that leadership group again. If you recall, we spent time with them prior to COVID as well, doing some work with all the PTO groups. So we're looking forward to reconnecting. The schools were agreeable to combine their standalone monthly meetings together for the building committee to be the topic.
Thank you, Scott. So as you can see throughout this calendar, we're giving residents and the community at least 2 opportunities a week to engage with the building committee, to get information about the project, to answer questions. It's really a big effort, but it's going to be well worth it in the end. One thing we're also adding, and I'm working with Nancy Parent to see when the best time and event would be, is specific events with seniors at the senior center, some existing Zoom meetings or classes that they have. They're going to slot us into those so that we engage the senior population as well. So before Meg dives into a little bit more about, kind of the expectation for especially the neighborhood meetings, do you have any questions about the structure of this or our plan for community outreach?
Kat, I have a question, and I guess it piggybacks on this topic of engagement. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think Ira had shared, I can't remember if it was last meeting or meeting before, the lack of, I don't know, it was responses from parents in particular that I think generally feels concerning. Is there a way that, appreciating that there's a structure of offering an opportunity for different segments of our population, and in particular the schools, is there a way that in addition to pushing out communication, that we actually try to measure what is the anticipated level of engagement in actually voting? Is there a way that is it intended that our committee will in any way attempt to engage that group that we through survey felt may have been disengaged?
I think a big focus needs to be on that target population, like Ira suggested. I think a lot of that work also would be from our interest group when it's time to get out the vote and get people to the polls. But absolutely, I think the neighborhood meetings are going to be a good avenue for that and engaging the parents, because it's around elementary school district. And those are the people that are going to attend these meetings to solicit feedback and really hopefully engage. So I think this plan will address that deficiency in their response and their engagement right now. And I think it's at the neighborhood level more so than at the topic meeting level.
Thanks.
Just quickly, Kat, and sorry, Beth, then I think did you have something you want to say? Wendy brought up in our last meeting that we need to be conscious of the fact of April break.
Yes.
In there. So I don't know if we want to play a little bit with some of the timing of that week of the 12th.
Okay.
Or not. I think we have to balance it, but is there ways we can, maybe move one forward? Take a little bit of the pressure off. I mean, I think we're going to have to, rely on the recordings as well, but we might need a little bit of flexibility on the calendar, just so everybody's aware. What we're going to vote on is the approach here. Certainly doesn't mean that things might not move a day here or there based on scheduling. But the overall approach and the understanding is really what we're going to work on with approval.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially because we are hosting 2 of the neighborhood meetings during that week.
Right.
There is some room. It looks like Mondays is a day that we're doing the neighborhood meetings, so maybe using that, or I mean, we're flexible. So yes, we can definitely look into that.
Yeah, and just make it as easy as possible for people. The thought process is maybe they will start traveling a little bit. We don't know. But I think that was a great point by Wendy to keep that in mind as we're really looking at setting dates.
Kat, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to ask a question. In what way does this approach maybe differ from what had been attempted as a means of communication that the last building committee had employed?
The last time we held community meetings, and I think breaking those off into topic meetings is different, because I know we've all been at community meetings, but it could go down a rabbit hole for 20 minutes about one topic and then not hit on other ones. And I think breaking it out by topic is a good way to get all the information out. This is also a concentrated effort to really dig into neighborhoods. I think last time we relied on school events, which again, there's no concerts this time. It's hard to actually get into the school and out into the community. So I think breaking it off this way is more of a deliberate effort to reach the full community rather than potentially relying on school parents or a full community meeting. And I think here we're giving a lot more opportunities closer to the referendum date.
Kat, I know we've talked about the calendar. I think we should consider doing it with the high school too, the high school community. Here's why. This is a case where we talked to Scott about getting some of the teachers talking about the experience of the building. So we should use the building as an example of a topic. And since we can't give tours because of COVID, and I assume we won't be able to, maybe we can take Scott's video there, and repurpose it and do a presentation there. I know, Meg, we didn't get a chance to talk about it this thing, but the more I look at the calendar, I think that, the star of the show here is showing exactly what's going on currently in the high school, or what physically it is, then answering those very specific questions, Michael, that I think might have been missed on the previous one, because the topics are always off topic. The topic is, how do we teach kids and what's currently going on in the high school? Kathy, you think that would be, and Scott, a good idea? Taking one of these sessions and doing one around just walking, focus on the building. This is a perfect case where the elementary ones is explaining more clearly about the overview of why it's important for their kids and everything, but actually focusing on the building might be a good topic.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely a good idea, making sure that we really are speaking to all those various groups would be important, and we need to include the high school in that.
Yeah. So I think we should just consider as one of the topics, not the topics, one of the presentations. It's actually the current situation. And then Richard and Mark can be brought into it. And that's the case where we can show one more time the before and after stuff. It just gives another opportunity to visually demonstrate the difference.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to participate in those meetings.
There is also one meeting that is in May, right before the town council sets the referendum, and that is what we're calling a community meeting. So this is one last, full effort to engage people, answer some last questions, and that's right before we would have to go into the blackout period.
Well, maybe, Kat, we can use that and use the high school as the backdrop.
Yeah. Yep, that's a good idea.
Just a couple comments if I could, and I apologize if the background noise is heavy. The high school comments that were just said are great. I do think that we do have to have a little bit of an overtone on disruption. A lot of the questions that came out of the last building committee was for parents that were either had kids in high school or just about to get into high school, and the disruption to their kids' experience in the school. And I do think we need to put a little effort on telling them that this plan has the minimal disruption has compared to what it was last time, and that this experience will not be tarnished because of this project.
Absolutely, Johnny. I think that's something that we can fold into one of the topic meetings, I think potentially on the project timeline, because that's when we will be talking about how long construction is happening, when it's happening. And that's just, that's a great message, because, it is minimal disruption to the students. So that's definitely something that will be highlighted in that meeting.
And this is Beth. I just want to piggyback on that, because I think, Johnny, that's an excellent point. That is a huge selling point for this particular project and what we're looking at, particularly if people remember last time. But it would be probably of interest to all of those parents that we might hit in those neighborhood meetings or PTO meetings.
Oh, you're breaking up on us, Beth.
It looks like she's frozen.
Frozen, yeah. Oh, now we don't hear you at all.
Yeah.
Stinks. I hate all this stuff. I wish we were sitting together.
Yeah. If we were in Switzerland, we wouldn't have a problem.
Beth, if you're still having difficulties, even if you want to put it in the chat, we can read it. If that's
How
easier.
about now? Because now it looks okay on my end.
No,
Yeah.
it's like tinny, you're in and out.
This is Wendy. I'll fill in while she tries to reconnect.
All right, Wendy, go ahead.
I just had some thoughts and quick questions.
Yeah.
With the neighborhood meetings, I see the 4 schools, but Farmington's really unique that we have this 5-6 Westwoods Upper Elementary School. So wondering if that should be another neighborhood meeting, because I know there's families that come in new and they come in as 5th and 6th graders, and this is going to be a significant impact on those children, and they might not know which schools that they were in before. So just wanted to bring that up, that maybe that was something we could add on, or another subgroup that could hit up those upper elementary students and families.
Yeah, that's something that we can, I hadn't thought about the fact that people may be joining later and they wouldn't know what elementary district they were in. And the neighborhood meetings, and I think you get this, is that it wasn't tied to the elementary school. So it wasn't just for parents, it's more people that would, if you live in the Union School District, you would go to this Union School meeting. But that's a great point. Definitely something that we can look to add just to make sure we're hitting everybody that we can.
I do think that, you know, that the fact that it's a much shorter timeline for construction, so that, you know, our fifth graders could be spending their whole career, you know what I mean, in a new high school or things like that. So I wonder if we could integrate some of that into the newsletter too, because it does seem to be something that is such a big issue, like Johnny said, in the last go around, and will continue to be a big issue as we go forward. And people sometimes might confuse, you know, the last project and the elements of that project with this project, and they're very different, very, very different. The last project had a lot more disruption, and because we were looking at the same footprint, but this is minimal, about as minimal as it gets. So I think that it might be something we want to integrate into the newsletter too.
So before I turn it to Meg to talk a little bit more, oh, Beth, I'm sorry, you just had your, we got Beth's comment through chat, I'll read it. Topic of limited disruption should be incorporated into all presentations, especially any involving parents of students of any age, because many have older siblings. That's exactly what we were just talking about. So great, perfect. So any other questions about the format or what we're thinking for our plan before Meg talks a little bit more about expectations?
Yeah, can we just do a little bit just beyond, just so people are clear on the red items?
Oh,
I know it's not specific engagement per se, but it really comes back to our timeline and what that means for us.
Exactly. Devin, if you go back to April, the first red item is TPZ, informal review of the project. Anything in red is something that needs to happen per chapter 53 of the code, the town code, which is what we're following through the process. So we would send the project to TPZ. We've been there twice now, just for an informal review. The next step would be to go to the Board of Education. Per the chart, or per the code, they have to approve the schematic design and project cost estimate. The last group that we go to is the town council, and that would be at their meeting on May 11th. And that is for approval of the schematic design and project cost estimate. And they also have to refer the project to an 8-24, which is Connecticut General Statutes, and that goes to TPZ. So that's just the formalities in terms of following our code and making sure we're doing everything we need to get this project to the referendum, which we have tentatively on here for June 3rd.
So just so we, you know, there was a couple pieces of information that we've discussed tonight that kind of come together, I think, in this conversation. So back in May, Devin's very busy tonight in his movement of the calendar. But so that when we've been talking about, which got kind of referred to, Sam referred to it in public comment, of that blackout period, and Kat, tell me if I'm wrong and what I'm going to say, is what actually it's triggered by what's going to happen right there on May 11th. So once that it is officially brought to referendum, and that's, will we have the wording on that day, Kat, or no?
Yes, the town council at that meeting would have to approve the warning and the actual question that's going to be on the ballot. So all of that is set ahead of time, and they set the referendum. They actually, technically, they set the town meeting, which has to be 10 days before the referendum, and that's per the charter. So at the May 11th meeting, the town council approves the project, sets the referendum and the town meeting, and that triggers the blackout.
And when we're discussing that blackout period, this is an election enforcement discussion. So for those of you who were part of the committee way back in the very beginning, we actually had, if you remember, a lawyer come in, our town lawyer come in and discuss with us elections enforcement and what that means and implications. I think we still need to do some work around that, but that's really what we're talking about on the May 11th. At that point, us as building committee members and representatives of the building committee, so I want to be very clear on that, our role then at that point from a communications as for the building committee stops for communication. So, and at that point moving forward is when we really will rely on our partners, advocacy PACs and other people to help us continue that communication and push that effort to get people out to vote at that point. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear. It comes up a lot in conversation, especially as we move closer to referendum, and it's really a part of our strategic plan of the effort we need to do between now and May 11th, and then what's going to happen from May 11th to June 3rd. Does anybody have, or does anybody want to add anything to what I just said, first of all, or any questions or any clarification? Go ahead, Ira.
Yeah, you're not limited as an individual.
Correct.
To get involved. You just can't represent the organization or use taxpayer dollars. That's basically it. Is that at that point the town cannot, I disappear basically from the picture because my role then in terms of being an advocate and helping out goes away. I can volunteer for one of the groups I want. That's my choice. Like any of you, I've seen superintendents become part of PAC groups. I've seen everything. I've seen the architects who are actually involved with it, part of a PAC group too. But you only can represent yourself. You can't represent the group anymore. And any other funds that are raised have to be done privately. That's basically the guideline. It hasn't changed in many years. And if it's violated, they fine the person who then is using the official institution. They get fined. It can be several $1,000s, $2,000, $3,000, and breaking the election law. That's basically the summary of how this works. I don't think you guys can have a problem here with it because everyone's kind of aware of all that. The debate is how much of a website can you leave up or what basic information. I've seen towns where they leave it up and they move some stuff. There's some they leave up everything, I'm surprised. But it takes a challenge to usually do it to challenge the site. So it's gonna be left probably to your lawyers. And sometimes they're kind of up in the air. So, well, we can do this, but you don't want to take the risk. So it just depends on the town and how your town lawyers interpret it.
So it's, I don't want us to dwell on that, during our conversation moving forward, but it gets, there's conversation, and I just want to make sure everybody remembers back to when we did have that conversation and why the strategy lays out the way it does, because we're really looking at what we do between now and May 11th.
Right.
As our primary focus.
Absolutely correct, Meg.
Any other thoughts or questions before I kind of go into, Beth's got another comment, I think.
Beth said, we should be looking to involve other senior housing outside of senior center because those folks are likely not involved with senior center. How do we tackle that? Outreach to staff and schedule or email slides/video. That's definitely something that I'll look into and make sure that we engage that population as well, so that we're reaching everybody. But great question.
Okay. Any other thoughts before we kind of I want to just talk a little bit with the building committee around kind of what our role is in each one of these types of engagement so that we can prepare for the time commitment really moving forward, because I think we all understand what's in front of us, I think, based on looking at this calendar and the level of engagement and where we all need to step up and participate and be present and really make sure that we're engaged at all levels where we can be. So if we go back to kind of that view of we can even start in March, doesn't matter. Devin, I think or just stay right there. April's good. So when Beth, or Beth, I'm still got you on my mind, Beth, it wasn't you, it was Kat. When Kat was talking about the different types of engagement that we have here, and to the point, I think, of the conversation we're having tonight, which is super important, is we have opportunities to add here too. So don't think that if we think we're feeling something, if we need to go out there and be in front of people to provide more information, we can do that. But we're going to need support, everyone's support, in order to make that happen, and to make sure that we kind of, make sure we have this evenly distributed across us to the best of our ability. So when we're looking at those neighborhood meetings, and right now the ones we have on the calendar that are specific around the elementary schools, we're going to be asking building committee members that live in those districts to participate. So I want to be really clear on this, that we as a committee are all together in this effort moving forward. So there will be additional meetings on your calendars from here until June, because, and especially until May, because that's really what our focus is. But we need to make sure that you keep that in mind. I want to make sure everybody's clear that, we're going to be asking people to participate at their neighborhood meetings and the ones that make sense to them. If we do add an upper elementary school meeting and you have kids that are in the upper elementary schools, it's very important that you're there in representation of the building committee and can answer questions and be there to support the presentations and be part of those conversations. So I just want to make sure we're 100% clear on that. I think we are, but I think it's also good to kind of state that and make sure that everybody's aware. Same thing with topic meetings, depending on the topic. Obviously, we're going to be relying heavily as well on our professional partners for these topic meetings to help us, but we're also going to be putting presentations together ahead of time so that content, again, can be shared, not only within our communication channels, but beyond us as well, so that the information can be distributed through many different channels and many different organizations. But again, we're going to be looking for a level of engagement here, so be prepared for that. From now until at least until that May 11th date, which is our main focus right now. So what we're going to layer on top of this, in addition to the engagements that you see here. So also do remember that we have also on the calendar, the communication subcommittee meetings will remain. Our meetings that we're having tonight, these standard building committee meetings, will remain. We're not removing those from the calendar. They're important to keep us on track and moving forward, but social media engagement as well, and helping us really thinking about how we can use our own resources and use, how can we reach out to the people that we know personally and get this information out to as many people as possible, always using the resources of the building committee as your source. So it's not that you're out there, without any support. I hope everybody knows that you will have tools, you will have communication, methods that are available to you. It might be sharing posts on Facebook that have been posted through the building committee. There's all different ways we can do it, but it is very important that as we as committee members are now saying, okay, we understand the shift. We've built and presented this excellent solution, and now is the time to do it. Let's move our focus to engaging community members, making sure they really understand that value, and getting them out to vote. And then obviously a shift after that May 11th timeframe on priority and who's going to be kind of really working on engagement and voting at that point. So does that make sense to everybody? I think it should. I don't think that's of any surprise, but this is really the turning point in our focus, I think, which is pretty exciting, to be honest with you, because we waited so long, with a year in the middle of a fantastic solution that we wanted to get out in front of people, and here we are. We've actually made it. We've got a date that we're working towards, and it's time for us to make sure that everybody shares that same level of excitement and enthusiasm around what this can really do for the community. Any thoughts around that, or?
Just a quick question, Meg, do you know that the committee is equally distributed among all the elementary neighborhood schools?
Kat has that list. Kat, you want to?
I made a chart. I have it up right here. I don't have it, but I did, and correct me if I'm wrong. West District, I have Meg in that district. Union, Johnny. Noah Wallace, Michael, and Wendy, if that's correct. Sharon, I'm not sure which one you're in right now, but it looks like
I'm in
East Farms.
But I can help with the high.
Perfect, because I had you in East Farms, so
Okay.
it all works out. And those are the 4 elementary schools. So we do have representation across all of the districts.
And I guess I would just clarify again, because I'm not certain if somebody doesn't have somebody in elementary school, you wouldn't want it to get lost, that we're just simply describing the district that you're coming, the area that you're coming from, not the school that your kids are attending, correct?
Right.
Correct. That was my intent in separating these out.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was just a quick and easy way to divide the town because we have the 4 elementary schools, but also a way to engage those parents at the elementary schools because that is the target demographic that we've identified. So it's a little bit of both, but it was a quick and easy way to divide the town up.
This is Beth. What are the chances you can hear me better now?
It's a little bit better. Try it. Keep talking. We'll let you know.
Okay. Well, you just tell me if you want me to go to chat.
Okay.
I thought maybe keeping the video off would help. I don't know how these things work. I was just wondering if we've thought about logistics for invites and how we get people, especially the neighborhood people that might not be tied into a school, how we're pulling them into these meetings.
Great question. We are actually including this calendar once it's finalized in the newsletter. So this calendar of community outreach will be just delivered to every household. Word of mouth, because as we identified in the survey, that is one of the main ways people get their information. And then I think word of mouth, I think the school system and our typical ways of spreading the word. But we wanted to finalize this calendar before our next newsletter went out so that we can make sure people have the opportunity to join us.
And principals could reinforce these dates and we'll have them in Friday folders.
So then Kat, if you're going to do it that way, I guess I'm still just hung up on having that representation from Westwoods and IAR. And just, if this is going out, like, for example, my kids are out of the elementary schools, I might look at this and be like, well, my kids aren't in any of those. So just putting that back out, because I guess my kids are traveling in that middle school, kind of upper elementary crowd, and just, it's a big population. So.
And I think those are opportunities that we can add in meetings to make sure that we're hitting all the schools, because you're right, people can be confused about, well, we would be in the Noah Wallace district, but we actually, my kid's at IAR right now. So it's just more opportunities and we welcome that. So I think we can add those dates on the calendar.
I think, Kat, what I'm hearing, and I want to put words in anybody's mouth, but I think what's happening here is I think people don't want, by the way we have it defined, that the only reason you come to this is if you have kids in union school.
Right.
Like
And
that,
wasn't
right? Right. So it might be just a wording, like we have to word it in a way. We might need to think about that a little bit. Right. I think, right. Is that right? That I think maybe that's what our concern is around.
I would agree with Wendy.
Yeah.
That, if your kids attended union, or if you're, and obviously I'm not the wordsmith, but you got to kind of garner that this is your district, and it's not like voting where you're used to going to something.
Yeah.
And you have a very small opportunity. It's all about that eye-catching word or two to get someone engaged, etc.
Would doing it, this is just me thinking out loud, would doing it by voting district be a better solution than by elementary school district? Would people know that more than what elementary district you live in?
Because we're trying to go after the parent population that has kids in school, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's a call to action that we're looking for from a marketing standpoint.
Yep.
I do think the elementary schools is a call to action. It just has to encompass that you have kids in that district that went to that school. Like, again, I'm not. So, but you know, if your kids attended Union or at Union, you could maybe couple it where maybe you include the lower or upper, IAR and Westwoods in that, et cetera. Not sure how to put it, but I don't think voting district would be the way to go either.
Okay. Yeah, just, I don't want people to think it's, oh, I don't have a kid in this elementary school, I'm not gonna come to the meeting. So I think wordsmithing and making sure that it's clear that it's more of like your neighborhood rather than the school.
This is
And-
Beth again.
Oh, go ahead, Beth.
You can put up with my bad sound. Yeah, I think, are we talking about maybe tweaking the words to maybe be a neighborhood name more than strictly tied to the school names?
Yeah, we could do that. Like if we, for East Farms, it could be East Farms and Oakland Gardens, so it's clear that it's like that area of town would be invited to something like that.
Directional. It can get a little tricky, I guess, with trying to be broader, but.
If you put even Union School neighborhood,
Yeah.
Yeah.
West District neighborhood.
Yep.
We all associate with our neighborhoods and trying to bring this as personal as possible.
Okay.
And we can say K-8 parents in the West District neighborhood. You know what I mean? That thing, or K-12 parents in the West District neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right. And then are these just parents we're focused on, or anyone in that neighborhood? So we could just rely on kind of recruitment on the part of.
Well, I think the main focus is the parents, just because we know that that's something we need to focus our efforts on. But, I think it's anybody. And the bottom line is you could go to any of them. So even though we're trying to focus it, because what we'd like to do is have people speaking at these that, I would go as West District. My kids went to West District, and this is my neighborhood, and this is where and people know me in my neighborhood. So me speaking carries more weight maybe than somebody else, just because somebody might know me that doesn't know me in the East Farms district. So that's kind of the point of what we're trying to do. So that's why we have people assigned. But in essence, you could go to anyone that works for you. You're going to get the same information, because there's no different information we're going to provide at the Union one over the West District one. It's just making sure we have the right people in the room to help kind of drive the conversation.
Hi, this is Ellen. I just want to make sure that we make sure people are included, because I'm trying to think if I was on the outside and looking at this, and I'm a Union School ex-parent, but if I saw potentially Union School parent and neighbors, that would pique my attention. If I saw Union School, I would think, oh, it was, I wouldn't feel included. So I think there's some importance to calling them whatever we're going to call them, if we're going to call it the elementary school parents and neighbors. And as Kathy said, maybe we could get a K-8 in there. To Wendy's point, that's very important too. That is a large population, Westwoods and Irving Robbins, and that might help that effort. Because my other thing is that to add more meetings, it's really hard. We don't want to dilute this calendar. That's a lot of meetings, and that might help alleviate having to create additional meetings.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts or?
Yeah, actually, from the last time around, some events that were very well attended and some had barely anybody.
Yep.
I would, in Kat's shoes, I would be giving a little bit of a grace period for signups, and then I would start mandating, because I'm blunt like that. We just need to figure out logistically who is better fit and make sure we have good representation. We don't need 15 people at one meeting and 0 at the next.
Yes.
And obviously you've got, Sharon and I in the Highlands, which is a big one, obviously because of the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhood, obviously. But some of the other ones, and I'll just say that you leave me out until the end and plug me in anywhere because I have kids and nephews on every single one of the states. So, if people sign up and then you need to plug us in, but we all need to have, a fairly equal amount of engagements. And if we take more than a week to answer, then start plugging us in. Because the biggest thing that I found is that if it's too fluid, people start to miss it or don't have the schedules down pat.
Right.
And for someone like me, and I'm sure you guys, a lot of you are like that, I need to have a schedule up front and I schedule around it.
Yep. I think it's a good point, Johnny, this is, and it is basically assigning it out. This is where we need people's support and help. Anything else before I kind of do a little recap on potential changes? Okay. So let me just kind of recap on what I think I heard as far as making some adjustments to what we have here. So I think one of the big topics was around the actual naming of the meeting, specifically the neighborhood meetings, and making sure we're very clear and inclusive when we publish this calendar of including that neighborhood portion so that people are clear and putting some clarification, I think, even around that further. So I heard that. I heard the addition of potentially the addition of that Westwood's IAR meeting on the calendar as an option to, again, capture some of those people that maybe didn't have the elementary school experience and maybe aren't aware. So that as an option, that we would use that final community meeting in May as a focus with the high school as a backdrop. So really having FHS be the focus for that meeting and the current facility and what that means. And then I think I also heard, there was one last point I had, and I forgot what, to Wendy's point, that week of the 12th through the 16th for vacation. I think we probably should look to move those two neighborhood meetings off of that week if we can, to make sure that people have a full opportunity to participate. Anything I missed? Kat, anything in addition?
That's what I had on my list as well. Yeah, I think that was everything.
Okay, anything else that anybody wants to add right now? Okay, so we have a motion on the table to approve the attached community outreach calendar with the amendments that were just noted. So obviously we will be making adjustments. Again, this is we are looking to publish something out to the community. So it's important that we have full commitment around this and make sure, as we mentioned, that we're going to get full support and make sure we have commitment from not only the building committee, but our other partners as well. So, we're talking to town council, we'll be talking to BOE, we'll be talking about, how can we get as many people engaged in these conversations as possible. So that is the motion that's on the table for approval with amendments. So we'll put that up for vote now. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Excellent, unanimously approved. So next steps around this, as you just said, we've got the appearance of everybody tonight, John. We've got new person all the time. So that will be the next step. So now we have a framework to work with. So now we start building in who's doing what when. And I know how important that is for everybody's schedules. So we need to get that nailed down and out to everybody so that we can get that leveled out if there's any conflicts and make sure that we have the appropriate representation at the meetings that we do have on the calendar right now. So that will be next steps. And we'll be continuing conversation, obviously, as we move through our meetings. So I think that is the last of our agenda. So the only thing we have left at this point is to put a motion on the table for adjournment.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
And
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right, unanimously approved. So we will adjourn at 7:46.
It was a nice family night. for the pension committee.
I know, exactly.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Meg.
the conversation, the engagement. This is exciting work we're doing, and we're right here. This is it. So we got to get out there and talk to people and get them just as excited as we are. So, all right, I appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Aye.
Good
Bye.
job, Meg.